Welcome to another episode of First Bite. We are back. We are kicking off a very new podcast series where we are getting to know the Detroit Lions free agent signings. But before we get into that, let me introduce myself. I am Jeremy Reisman. I'm the producer over at Pride of Detroit. You can find me at Detroit Online. As always, co-hosting First Bite with me is senior editor of Pride of Detroit at Ryan_POD on Twitter. Ryan Matthews is here. How we doing, man?
The sun is out.
That's right.
It's great.
we this is like a matinee version of this. We're starting at 5:30, which is well earlier than we normally start these, and we got on time too. So congratulations to the live audience for actually us meeting your expectation. But this episode, I promise you, will supersede your expectations because we are kicking off this series with the Lions' first free agent signing, a guy that they clearly emphasized and prioritized in free agency and gave maybe the biggest contract that they've given to an external signing in the Brad Holmes era. We are talking, of course, about Steelers cornerback Cameron Sutton. And to help us get to know Cameron Sutton, we have a very special guest. It is Nick Fairbaugh, the Steelers beat writer for sports for Steelers Now, I should say. Nick, thank you for joining the show.
Yeah, thanks guys for having me on. Excited to talk about Cam. Just getting it out of the way. This guy is one of my favorite players from covering the Steelers. So I have a lot of stories and a lot to tell you about him. I think you guys got a good one here.
Yeah, I'm very excited to get into it because it is the signing that I was probably most excited about and kind of jaw hit the floor when it actually happened. So let me hear what your first reaction was when you heard not only that the Lions had signed him, but the contract terms as well.
Yeah, well, the contract terms, I kind of expected Cam to get a nice deal.
Yeah.
A lot of people thought that was really expensive for him. They were like, oh, he's going to get 8 or 9. I always thought it was I actually thought 11 to 15-ish was where he was going to get. He had a really good year. I expected this. This was kind of on the low end of my expected contract, but he got a lot of guaranteed money. So that's why that kind of came up. And the second thought was the Steelers just letting him walk was it was kind of a shocker because I think everyone kind of thought he was going to come back. You know, this is a guy that was loyal to the Steelers for a very long time. He's been there since 2017. And it felt like that they made him a priority. They had started contract negotiations with him very early on, as far back as the combine. We had heard that they were already talking money. So it was kind of like, okay, I guess he's going to get re-signed. And then he didn't. In fact, very quickly he did it. And so it was kind of a shock. And then obviously the Steelers kind of made their own moves, Patrick Peterson and everything. But that's kind of my first reaction was, man, that is a really good value signing for Detroit. And the Steelers really lost a good cornerback that can do a lot of things here. And so I think this is a clear move for the Lions where they got a guy that they really wanted and they locked them up very well. It wasn't too expensive over a year. But that guaranteed money is a lot for a $33 million deal. I mean, you're talking $22 million guaranteed. So that is a near full guaranteed deal. It's close you're going to get to a non-quarterback in this day and age in the NFL. So that's kind of my first reactions to it.
And it's kind of interesting too, because I think Peter King was the one who said it, but that $22.5 million guaranteed is right up to what the Steelers had paid him over 5 or 6 years total. I think he made $23 million with the Steelers, and now he gets $22.5 million guaranteed with the Lions.
Yeah, he got 2 years, like $9.5 million when he came back first time and hit free agency. You know, it was interesting because Cam Sutton, when he first hit free agency, was kind of this guy that had been a big contributor to the Steelers, but not necessarily in a starting capacity. Mm-hmm. So they didn't really know what they had in him, but they knew he was good enough and they wanted him back. So they got him really cheap. And then he starts for 2 years and plays great both years in different roles, both years too, which is really fun. And then last year, he really stepped up in a big way and kind of had his shining season, in my opinion, his best season as an NFL player. So you know, it's kind of weird. He's a 3rd round pick out of Tennessee. They got him at great value. He's a guy that's always been kind of there as a smart guy that they have really liked. And so it's been a good arc for him, but it's very interesting to see him break the bank like this. It's been a long time coming for him. That's all I'll say, to finally break the bank. It's good for him because he deserves it as a player. He's really, really, really solid.
So with all that being said, Nick, why do you think the Steelers ultimately decided, hey, you know what? Go ahead and take that contract to Detroit. Do you think that they weren't interested in matching that money? Or do you think that they're just entering a different phase in kind of, is it a rebuild in Pittsburgh? Is it a retooling? Like what's going on over there?
Yeah, I think it's a retooling. I think they're looking to do some different things. I think they wanted Sutton back. I think it was the guaranteed money that got him. I don't think that they wanted to pay 22 million guaranteed. And the Steelers don't guarantee a lot of money. Even look at the TJ Watt and Minkah Fitzpatrick deals. A lot of that guaranteed money is not on the back end of the contract. It is on the front end of the contract. And the Steelers like that because it gives them flexibility late in the deal. If they sign Cam Sutton to 3 years, 33 million with 22 guaranteed, they are keeping him minimum 2 years, probably all three. And that's something that they don't like to do. They don't like to lock themselves into long contracts with heavily guaranteed money. So they don't do it a lot. And I think that's what got them. I think Detroit ran up the guaranteed money, and the Steelers were like, we can't do that. And they clearly had a lot of plans this offseason based on what they did with their offensive line and their defensive line. The Steelers have put so much money in the trenches already this offseason. I think that was a big thing, and I think that could have helped it. I think they maybe sacrificed Cam Sutton to get Isaac Samalo and to get Larry Ogunjobi back and to get some of these really key guys, because I clearly think, Andy Weidl's now with the Steelers from the Eagles. I think that they're following an Eagles model in a lot of ways, that they want to kind of build up the trenches and help Kenny Pickett, and I think that's what it is. So I think they really wanted Cam Sutton back. I just think the contract ended up being really rich for their liking. I think Cam Sutton wanted to test the market to see what he could get. And I think he got life-changing money, and I think it's good for them. And the Steelers ended up obviously kind of switching gears and going to get a vet like Patrick Peterson. But trust me, I don't think they wanted to lose Cam Sutton. I don't think any of this was related to performance. I don't think any Lions fans should be looking at that and saying, well, why'd they let him walk? I think it was the contract and how it was structured. It just made them really uncomfortable. They don't like to run up that guaranteed money total. And so I think that's ultimately why Cam Sutton left and walked, and the Steelers ended up turning to Patrick Peterson and will probably draft another one.
Well, before we get into him as a player, I want to talk about him as a person, because all I hear is fine, upstanding stuff. He's a really smart person, a really good person in the community. So I wonder if you can kind of give us some backstory into who he is as a person, maybe both off the field and maybe who he can be in the locker room. Because I don't know, I look at the Lions young secondary and I look at this guy as maybe a potential captain.
Yeah, so Cam's interesting. He's a quiet dude. He's not super vocal. You're not gonna see him be rambunctious or any of that. He's a guy though that leads with dignity and leads with fierceness. And what I say by that is he's gonna be able to do an interpersonal kind of relationship with any young DB there. He'll pull you aside and tell you this. Great community person, one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. Very mellow. He's a very laid back, chill type of guy. But he's a get to business type of guy. When it's time to put the pads on and it's time to work, you better be ready to work with Cam Sutton. One of the things that he has always done in the Steelers locker room is he has always kind of taken guys under his wing. Everybody in that secondary has always talked about that. A young DB, it didn't matter if they were a safety or a slot corner or an outside corner. All the young guys are like, well, they called him Unc because he's Uncle Cam. Like, that's what he is. He's an old soul. I think that's how I would describe him. He's a very old soul, and he's a very mature person, and he's the smartest guy in that room. He walked into a room, and he might be the smartest guy in the room. He's a leader. He's not a vocal leader. He's not going to get in front of a team and call you out or do anything like that, but he's a personal leader. He'll lead by example. He'll talk to you one-on-one. He'll be your mentor on the side. I think that's what I think about Cam Sutton as a person in a locker room. As a person off the field, he's just a great mellow person, a chill person. He'll do just about anything for you if you ask him to do it. So Cam Sutton is a guy that is the type of personalities that NFL teams look for when they are talking about leaders, when they're talking about cornerstones in a locker room. Cam Sutton's been that. He's a role model. He's a guy that sets what you do every day if you are a young player. You look at him and you say, I want to be that guy in the future. And that's kind of what Cam Sutton is. And so everything you heard about him, leader, all of that, Cam Sutton is that. He's not, if you were looking for a super vocal type of leader, a guy that maybe gets in front of a room and will call you out, that's not him. But he's a guy that can be a leader of a room and kind of command the presence and the respect. He's the guy that when he talks, everybody in the room stops and listens. That's kind of how I would describe Cam Sutton.
So, I mean, with all that being said, Nick, I think what is on Lions fans' minds is with the overhaul that they've done, especially at cornerback and at outside cornerback, and paying a guy, like you said, $22 million guaranteed. Does Cam have the potential to be a number one cornerback on the football field? It sounds like he's incredible in the room. Sounds like he's a really smart, headsy guy who, knows the game of football incredibly well. Does he have the potential to become a number one cornerback? Hey, this is my side of the field. Good luck throwing over here.
I think that's the big question with him. He's a really good corner too. But here's always been the thing with Sutton. He's had great IQ. He's been great on the football field. Got good ball skills. That was his real big thing this year. 5 picks, 15 pass deflections. That was awesome. But he has never truly been a number one. And why? Because he's not that athletic. And that has been the big thing. He's not a super athletic guy. Now, it's not mean he's not athletic relative to the league. He's an average athlete. He's not an athlete where you're just going to get burned downfield just because he's slow. Like, he's not a detrimental athlete, but he's not going to knock your socks off type of athlete. He's never super explosive downhill. He kind of wins through film study and his tape study, and that's kind of how he's always been. Cam Sutton's a cerebral player, but he doesn't put the cerebral with the athleticism because he doesn't have the native athleticism. And so I think that's the question. But this year, I'll offer this tidbit when I get asked this question. He was thrown into the corner one role this year. He wasn't necessarily expected to be that. In fact, the Steelers expected that to be Akello Witherspoon after he had a great year last year. Well, Akello missed most of the year with a really bad hamstring injury that just kept getting injured. So Cam Sutton stepped up, and he stepped up into the corner one role, and he had to face a lot of good players. We're talking Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, just in the division, right? Amari Cooper, all these great players, and then other guys like A.J. Brown. He's had to face these guys, and he did a really good job doing it. Now, I don't know if he's consistently going to play at that level, but when I say his best year was last year, it was because he was able to be the Steelers' number one corner. He didn't shut off the entire side of the field, but he was competitive, and he made plays on the football, and he was willing in the run game, and he would come down in the screen game and be willing there. He's going to be a really good corner, too. Is he going to be a corner one? I can't guarantee that. I don't think he was even corner one last year, even though he played well, and he certainly gave the Steelers a lot there to work with. But I think his athletic limitations still always come back to him just a little bit. He's not sudden enough to catch up with that freak athlete that beats him downfield every now and then. He's just not athletic enough to get down and completely get that interception unless he has that great film study. So it's always going to be, I think, just a little bit slower athletically. So don't expect a great athlete with Cam Sutton, but expect a cerebral guy who's going to give you steady play. He's very consistent. I think that's always been my favorite thing about Cam Sutton is he's like this. And when he's inconsistent, he goes up. So he might have a bad game. Well, he's going to bounce back. So Cam Sutton is a very consistent player as a cornerback 2 level. I'm interested to see if he can take that next leap. I just look at that athleticism. That was the knock of him coming out of Tennessee. It's kind of been the knock on him his whole career in terms of what has lacked the corner one ability. But he makes up for that in other ways.
Well, let's talk a little bit about schematics and where he's most comfortable, because obviously if there's physical limitations, but he's a cerebral player, he probably likes certain things that he can do well. So is he better in man? Is he better in zone? Is he a press guy? Is he better when he's off coverage? What is his comfort zone there on the field?
Yeah, so when I'm talking about where he makes it up, versatility. This guy did about 8 jobs on the Steelers defense over his career. He started off as their dime backer. So he was their 4th corner. They would bring him in kind of to be a do-it-all guy. And the Steelers dime backer is interesting because they run that Tomlin Tampa 2 stuff, and they switch Minka down, of course, because he's such a versatile chess piece. So what Cam Sutton would end up doing is, yes, he would be dime backer in the middle of the field, or he would be a slot corner. He would also rotate back to be a deep third safety. He would work free safety. So he could be free safety. He's worked as an overhang in that role. He's worked as that dime backer. He's been their passing down slot corner. He's been their every down slot corner. He's been their outside corner, both boundary and field side. So what I mean by this is he does everything. I mean, there's nothing that Cam Sutton has not done in the secondary outside of strong safety. That's about the only place. But he can rotate you down, and he can really open up a lot of things for your safeties if that's how you want to use him as like a sub-package do-it-all guy. He can do that. He can slide inside on 3rd down and play outside on 1st and 2nd down. That's how the Steelers used him last year. He played outside on 1st and 2nd down, and 3rd down he would be slot, or he would be that dime backer that would rotate back up to the deep third safety. And when I'm talking about rotations, he rotates high. So they will put him down at the line of scrimmage, head up, and a slight overhang roll. We're talking maybe seven yards off the ball. Minka will roll down to the robber roll, and he'll go all the way back and collect it. And why he can do that? Because of his tape study. He's one of the smartest players I have seen at the DB position come through Pittsburgh. So that's kind of where he makes his hay. Now, if we're talking about where he likes it in coverage, I think off man and zone. Yeah. He's not really super experienced in press. He's done it, but I don't think it's his most comfortable kind of phase. Now, I think off man, he's really good because he's fluid enough. He's not super quick, but he's very fluid, and he can read it. I think he really likes being in zone, though, because he can just read quarterbacks. When he has his eyes on the quarterback is when he's at his most dangerous. He's a ball hawk, so he comes up and makes picks, and he makes pass deflections. The Steelers had a really cool play that they like to do. They like to do trap coverage, 5 trap that, Asante Samuel used to do this back in the day in New England a lot. Steelers did that with Cam Sutton. They did it with Joe Hayden for a while. Joe Hayden, we're talking 30-year-old Joe Hayden, so I'm talking Grizzly veteran Joe Hayden. Right. Well, Cam Sutton took that over last year when Joe Hayden left. So they trust this guy to do a lot of different things. He does something that I love, and that's that he ad-libs. So he might be having to carry the 1, but he'll peel off to the 2 and jump an out route. Like, that's the stuff Cam Sutton does. So I think he's most comfortable in zone and off man. He can do press. It's not his It's not his best thing. He's not super physical. He's willing to be physical, but that's not really his thing. So I would say get him in off man zone. Let him be a chess piece all over the football field, and you have a guy that is very hard to replace, because that's been the thing with the Steelers, is they've been trying to fill his void because he does 3 people's jobs in 1 man, and he's a very versatile player. So let him do what he does, and that's be versatile and move all over the football field. And I think he can really be an asset piece kind of wherever you want, depending on matchup.
Well, I'm loving all this so far, Nick, and I'll leave Jeremy to talk about maybe what he struggles with the most. I mean, outside of it really sounds like athletic limitations with Cam Sutton, because it sounds like he puts the work in, week in, week out, in the film room and things like that. So I want to know, what is your favorite, most memorable play of Cam Sutton's career in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, that's tough, because Sutton's had a lot of good plays. I love his willingness to be physical. And by that, I mean, he's not super strong. His frame doesn't have a ton of muscle on it, but he's willing to just play physical. And so the Steelers sometimes would allow him to just come down on screens and blow up plays. There's a play last year against the Eagles. It's in absolute garbage time, but Jalen Hurts and the starters are still on the field. A.J. Brown's going to get the screen, and he just destroys Zach Pascal, goes right through him, and destroys a screen. That's one of my favorite plays from last year. But we're talking about, some of his best plays. I like his ball hawking ability, and that's one of my favorite things. The pick against the Raiders has to be up there, right? 24th. He comes over the top. This one was one of my favorites, because what the Steelers like to do sometimes with an outside corner like Sutton is they stretch his athletic limitations a little bit. I'll say that first of all. But what they'll do is they'll match kind of, if you do an over-under, if you do a high-low concept, they'll match that, and the free safety will come down, and the outside corner will come over top. So they'll kind of mix and match it, and they did it against Derek Carr on that last play, and Sutton was the man that had to rotate all the way over to the top, become a top safety, and got the pick anyways. It was really impressive. The ball was a little underthrown, but I thought it was one of his best plays where he really pushed kind of the button. There's also a great play against Cincinnati in 21 where he kind of fights through 3 guys, tight ends. They're trying to pick play him, and he just kind of runs over the top because he had realized it. So pre-snap, he's supposed to be inside leverage. He ends up outside. They hit the kind of screen play out there. They were thinking they were going to get a lot of yards, and he just bams T. Higgins down low. I mean, he is really good. I don't know if there's a play that just kind of sticks out right away as, okay, that's Cam Sutton play that comes to mind, but those are a few of the plays that kind of I think about. I also think about the Bills game in 2021 where they kind of went into Buffalo and upset them and won that game. He had a great play on Stephon Diggs where he was in man coverage, off man on a flag route. And Diggs cooks him at first. He gets back into the hip pocket, though, and comes back and makes a great play. It would have been a touchdown-saving play. I think that's really impressive. And then the other one I can think of against the Bengals week 1, he makes an insane play on I believe it was Higgins coming up the seam from the slot where he fights back into the ball. He's in outside leverage. They hit it up the seam. He comes back and just reaches out and grabs it. I mean, it was complete ball hawking ability. There's a lot of great plays for Cam Sutton that stick out to me. And those are just few of a guy you're getting. It's the
Yeah.
cerebral nature of it that he loves, and you can see it on his game film all the time.
But I think what sticks out the most, Nick, is that the first play you went to was a play that people like Dan Campbell and Aaron Glenn will absolutely love about this guy, right? Like
Absolutely.
sniff out the screen, blow somebody up, and go make a play on the ball, and right, Jeremy? Like
Yeah.
that screams like, hey, that's why this guy got
Right.
3 years, 30 million, 22 guaranteed.
You know what? I'll tell you a story that I have about that Buffalo game. Because they were in a position to win that game, and it was 4th and 1. Sutton was the second corner on the field with Joe Haidt. So they could have had a lot of different guys on. Cam Sutton was like the corner 3 last year. 2021 he was before he became the corner 1 this year. So they decided to run a fake flip screen to Devin Singletary and instead hit a fullback belly coming off the kind of wide end. It's kind of trap with Reggie Gillum. And Sutton sniffed it out and was the only man anywhere near it. Everybody went this way with Singletary. Sutton is one-on-one with Reggie Gillum, he has 60, 70 pounds on him, and just mams him. And I mean, just whacks him. And he just goes back, falls down. It's a turnover on downs. It won Steelers the game. And then post-game, he talked about it. It was on their preseason tape. And that's where he got it.
Wow.
He was the only one that sniffed it out. That's where Cam Sutton is most valuable. He's going to see something that no one else on the field sees, and he won them the game because of that play. That's a great story. That might be the play that sticks out the most. Just kind of what Cam Sutton is. That's what he is.
Now I'm going to do some digging and find that play because that sounds awesome. I could talk to you about Cameron Sutton forever, especially with all the awesome information you're giving me. I got 2 more for you. One, since you've been giving us a lot of great on-field stories, do you have any good off-field stories about Cam Sutton?
Yeah, this summer it was OTAs and Cam Sutton came. It was the last day of OTAs and Cam Sutton looked just dead. And by that I mean he was tired. You could tell. Well, it turns out this man had a child recently. I think he has 2 or 3 kids now. And he was just talking about how much love he has for them and how much hard work. He said he basically came to practice for OTAs on 2 hours, sometimes no sleep. I mean, to do what he does doing that, I think that was a great one. And I just talked to him. I mean, locker room availability had been over for 15 minutes and he just kind of waved people off. He wanted to keep having this conversation about his personal life. He could have, it was the last day of OTAs, so he could have gone home. He had a month off. And he just kept talking about kind of how his family life is and how, he looks forward to that every day and how tired he was. I think over the month he said he had gotten less than like 100 hours of sleep. It was insane. It was crazy how little sleep that man had gotten throughout kind of OTAs and that whole schedule. Another one that I really think about was the one time I remember him actually getting vocal in front of the team. It's kind of on the field, kind of off the field, but the Steelers were really reeling, of course, early in this year. And then they had that great kind of second stretch where they ended up 9-8. Well, it was after their loss to the Eagles before the bye week. And a lot of the guys were, celebrating still on the field. They were dancing they were getting blown out. And Cam Sutton didn't like it. And we could hear from outside the media room him just grilling into him. I don't think I'd ever heard Cam Sutton yell. And I still haven't heard him yell since that. But he just grilled into them about this business, how fortunate you are. He's a guy that comes from humble beginnings. And so he really doesn't forget about his roots. And he just tore into them about, oh, this is a privilege of playing football. And this is, all of this. It showed his leadership to me. And he's willing to get outside his comfort zone when he needs to. I think that's always been something about Cam Sutton that has really drawn me to him as a player, as a person. He's one of my favorite players to cover. I'm going to be very sad. I'm not going to be able to just go up to him on a random Wednesday because I usually every Wednesday I would always go talk to Cam Sutton.
Yeah.
Just because I could get the intel on the opponent, the game, film study, whatever I wanted every day, every week from him. And so every time you talk to him, you kind of get what he gets. And I remember he said in the story, the Peter King story, he talked about how this was life-changing money. And I think that's really kind of indicative of the type of guy Cam Sutton is. It really is life-changing money for him. And so he kind of realizes where he's at, and he's a great family person. You see that he's always around the community helping. There are so many stories of him going to Children's Hospital, for example, during the off hours, unannounced outside of Steelers like sanctioned ones where he just goes there and to cheer people up. So Cam Sutton does a ton of stuff off the field. You gotta love Cam Sutton and what he does off the field. You gotta love Cam Sutton the person, 100%.
All right, last one. I don't know if you're the kind of person that hates grading things or is down with it, but I from your perspective, what grade do you give the Lions move here?
I think it's an A-. I think it's a good, solid signing for them. I think they get a really good cornerstone on the secondary for 3 years. Again, I don't know if he's a corner one, but he's not getting paid corner one money. Really, if you look at the money where he's getting it, this is about corner two money right now in the NFL. I think he's getting paid like one, and he's a versatile chess piece that you're going to have the ability to do whatever you want with him. He is versatile. He's able to do it. And so I really like the signing for him. I think they needed some stability in the secondary. There are some talented players in that secondary for sure, but I think Sutton just gives them a level of consistency. And I think that maybe that's what they were looking for.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, you just know what you're going to get every Sunday from Cam Sutton. You're going to get good level play, and some days he'll be spectacular. And I think that's kind of where you have it with Cam. He's a really solid player. The price isn't outrageous. You didn't you didn't overpay for him. You paid, quite honestly, I think, very good value for him. So I think this is a really good signing for them. He's not going to be a corner one if that's what they're expecting. I think they're going to be a little disappointed. He's going to get beat every now and then. I mean, that is something. He does get beat. He's just not athletic enough. If you put him against some guys like Tyreek Hill, for example, don't expect him to cover Tyreek Hill. Don't expect him to do that. Don't expect him to cover. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Right?
I mean, just don't expect it. But if you expect him to cover, some other receivers that maybe try and get physical with them a little bit or try to knock him around, he can do it. He can do it. He did it with T. Higgins. He was their one true answer to T. Higgins. And that's kind of what I look at. He can cover taller receivers. He can do a lot of different things. So Cam Sutton's a really good signing for the Lions. I think they'll be very happy with what they got here in Cam Sutton, both on the field and off the field.
Well, Nick, really do appreciate your insight. I think you got Lions fans even more excited for a signing that they were already pretty thrilled about. So, as a repayment for your knowledge, I'll give you the floor here to promote whatever you guys have going on at your website, where people can find you, what sort of things they might be interested in reading.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter at FaribaghFB, obviously in full NFL draft mode, NFL free agency. Heading up to Penn State Pro Day tomorrow. So
Nice.
if you are a slobber for Joey Porter Jr. content, that's coming down the line.
Okay.
I'm telling you, Joey Porter Jr. to the Steelers is appearing quite likely, but that's over at SteelersNow.com. All the best Steelers stuff over there, film studies, features, whatever you may want. I rate it all. So feel free to check it out over there.
All right. Appreciate your time, Nick Faribaugh. It was great information. We might have to hit you up again in case, the Lions and Steelers meet in the Super Bowl. I think we can all just expect that to happen at this point.
Yeah, I think it's going to happen, right? Mike T versus Dan Campbell actually could be the best interview off ever in the Super Bowl. To be quite honest with you.
I'm with you 100%. All right, Nick. Thanks again for having us or for joining us. And thank you all for listening. We'll be back. We'll be doing all of the Lions' big free agent signings in a full series. So this was just the first, a great one to kick it off, and we'll have more coming your way. But until next time, it's chaos. Be kind.